All right, let's start. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Diana, and I am the head of research and sustainability at Global Blockchain Business Council. It's my pleasure today to welcome you to our GBBC's Virtual Members Forum on Securing eKYC with Blockchain-Backed Provenance. We are a bi-weekly webinar showcasing the innovative work of our members around the world. And today, we're joined by Duncan Johnston-Watt, co-founder and CEO, and Csilla Zsigri, Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder at Paravela, and also a special guest, CEO and co-founder of Uqoud, Mustafa Bilbeisi. Paravela has partnered with Uqoud to integrate its blockchain-backed provenance technology into Uqoud's contract management platform. This means this collaboration provides financial institutions in the GCC and MENA regions with an identity service that enables them to efficiently and securely obtain necessary Know Your Customer information. This innovative identity service reduces communication overhead between financial institutions and allows them to digitally verify and validate customers without redundant processes or the disclosure of personally identifiable information. In this webinar, Duncan and Csilla, again joined by the special guest Mustafa, will discuss the details of this project and share their future plans. So before we begin, I'm going to introduce Duncan, Csilla, and Mustafa. Duncan is the CEO and co-founder of Paravela, a data integrity company. He is an open source advocate and serial entrepreneur. Headquartered in Saudi Arabia, his latest venture is responsible for curating their open source, blockchain-backed provenance platform Chronicle and supporting customers that leverage this technology wherever they are in the world. Paravela is a natural evolution of his previous ventures that have championed the enterprise adoption of blockchain, cloud, and autonomic computing. Earlier in his career, Duncan held a number of fintech roles in London, Paris, and New York. In recognition of his work pioneering the use of Java enterprise technology in financial services, he was nominated for a Computer World Smithsonian Award. And Duncan finally holds an MSc in computation from Oxford University, where he was a graduate student at Balliol College.
Which means I can count.
Zsigri. So welcome, Duncan. We're so happy to have you. Very, very impressive background. Csilla Zsigri is the Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder at Paravela, also, as we know, a data integrity company. She works closely with Duncan and has also led strategy and marketing at BTP between 2021 and 2023. And prior to that, for a number of years, she was a technology and industry analyst at 451 Research, acquired by S&P Global Market Intelligence in 2019. Csilla led market intelligence and business modeling work in several EU-funded research, development, and innovation projects. Csilla is multilingual, and she holds an MSc in business and economics. And last but not least, Mustafa Bilbeisi, our special guest and CEO and co-founder of Uqoud, which is a contract management platform provider, is a strategic marketer with a successful background in developing and managing products, achieving and maintaining market leadership. Mustafa is an expert in digital transformation of business units and shifting operators into ICT players with a diverse portfolio catering for local markets and business needs. Mustafa is a motivational leader, stimulating innovation, digitization, and disruptive models that result in major market impact and value uplift. Companies he previously worked with include Zain, Comatech, and AMR. Mustafa holds an MSc in International Business and a BSc in Engineering. So we have a great team of people with us today. So to the audience, finally, before we begin, I want to mention we welcome your questions at any point during today's presentation. Please submit them in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will take them at the end. So finally, thank you, Duncan, Csilla, and Mustafa for joining us, and I will now hand things over for you to begin.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Diana. You did such a great job at introducing everybody, so I don't think I have to say anything else. I don't know, Duncan, do you want to say a few words before we begin?
No,
or...
I think we're good to go. So, Csilla, why don't you take
Excellent. So, yeah, so, before we start and dig into, what we're doing with our partner Uqoud, I just wanted to sort of set the language so we have the same understanding about, the things that we are going to talk about. So obviously, I mean, this might not be a surprise, and I guess most of you are familiar what electronic know your customer is, but, just to say that it's, it's an alternative to a more traditional KYC process that used to be, very, mostly paper-based and manual, and a KYC is completely or semi-completely automated. It uses a combination of, technologies that could be biometrics, multi-factor authentication, facial recognition, electronic signature, and so on. And through these things, these technologies, businesses can carry out customer identity verification and validation in a digital and remote way. And another term that is going to be important is provenance, which is, I think, sometimes we see people getting confused about what provenance is. Sometimes they mix it up with things such as audit trail, and those are not the same, I can tell you, or authentication and so on. This is a different thing that we're talking about. So we like to define it as, provenance is something that captures the origin and life journey. That would include, ownership, history, custody, location, and so forth of any physical or digital asset. By asset, we mean anything of value. So this term, I think many people in the art world are familiar with this term, but what we find is that it can be, applied much more broadly, and it can create a lot of value, across, a number of industries. Actually, there's data from PricewaterhouseCoopers. Some economists put a report together, and they actually estimated that provenance and traceability would make up over 50% of commercial applications of blockchain technology, and could even represent an economic impact of nearly $1 trillion by 2030. So we are very passionate about provenance. And why are we talking about these concepts? Maybe Mustafa, I'd like to ask you just to elaborate a little bit on the importance of these two concepts when it comes to contract management, what obviously Uqoud focuses on.
Sure. Well, basically, the electronic know your customer tends to collect a lot of information about people, right? When someone is accessing a contract or signing a contract, you will need to verify that person's identity. By verifying that person's identity, it means collecting ID and sometimes, as you rightly said, digital signatures. Now, all of these entities, as part of the electronic know your customer, is quite a high value. So having them securely stored, securely managed, and also tying them to consent, right? Which was how we say the consent management system aspect of it, whereby I'm giving my consent for someone to store that data. So the consent by itself is of high value that needs to be rightly secured. And the same applies to the rest of the data. So this is where the two concepts are crucial, because people would want this to feel, the safety aspect of this data being rightly secured, and this is what provenance actually provides in order to complement a safe way of handling the data that we capture of clients and handling their contracts, verifying people, digitally onboarding people. So it's crucial for us, at least at Uqoud, to make sure that we're securely handling all of this data.
Fantastic, thank you. So now let's talk a little bit about this, these two technologies coming together. It's our Paravela's provenance platform and Uqoud's contract management platform. Why don't you, Duncan, start just spend a few minutes on what Paravela provenance platform is, what it does, and so on. So please.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy to do that. And I mean, I guess if you're thinking about it, if you take a sort of step back and don't worry too much about the implementation side of things, there's three key areas that we focus on. The first, and I would argue the most important, I mean, we can debate this, of course, is establishing a common language for really talking about these assets. And when I say common language, the real reason that's important is that in many use cases, there are multiple parties involved, and they will have different ways of referring to, frankly, the same thing. So, an asset in one inventory management system might be labeled ABC, and in another one, 1, 2, 3. These are obviously simplistic identifiers for sure. But my point is that, one of the key things that the Paravela Provenance platform does is enable the creation of a common language, which will then allow us to all talk about the same thing and have a holistic view of that asset. And again, it's important that this isn't done in a sort of in an arbitrary or proprietary way. So we take great care to ensure that what we're doing when we describe the provenance sort of vocabulary or taxonomy is that we adhere to a standard called the provenance ontology from the W3C. So that's really the first point I'd want to make. The second, and of course, why are we members of, and in fact, and myself, ambassadors for the GBBC, is because we clearly see there is immense value, business value, enterprise value in leveraging technologies like distributed ledger in order to not just have a common language, but when you actually capture the provenance data, ensure that it's stored and guaranteed to be a single source of truth, or a single, better way of thinking about it is, everyone can see the same thing and no one can mess with that data without it being immediately blindingly obvious. And so, but as Csilla says, we're not talking about an audit trail at the level of a blockchain where you can trace, individual blocks and individual, transactions within a block. We're talking about a higher level concept around the provenance of an asset. And when we say provenance, we're really talking about, in terms of vocabulary, being able to define in any given domain, and we'll get onto this in the case of how we work with Uqoud in a minute, in any given domain, what are the assets you're interested in? Give them meaningful names. What are the actors that are interacting with those assets? And let's make sure that we capture those concepts in a very clearly defined way. And then probably most importantly, what are the activities related to those assets? So, and of course, attributes that go with all of the above. So, the common language is a language of business. And then the platform ensures that any information about those assets is stored immutably. And the real value add of doing it this way is ultimately this improves and promotes transparency between and across stakeholders. And this is something which is very, very important and actually ties in very much with sort of the open data movement, which is something that I can attest to here in Saudi Arabia as being incredibly important. And they're very far-sighted in terms of its importance, whether you're talking about it from a business or an individual point of view. So this idea of making things more efficient, more reliable, more secure is really what underpins what we're doing. And in the introduction, Diana mentioned that we were the creators of an open source project called Chronicle, and that's still at the core of what we're doing. But the Paravela Provenance platform, in short, makes this enterprise ready. So we're adding tools that allow you to quickly build out these domains, as we call them, that describe the assets, the actors and the activities you're interested in. Then take that, compile that so that you can then deploy that on the platform. But equally important give people the ability to then explore that platform. So, classic Paravela Explorer, and also the tooling around data ops. So data ops is massively important in this world for us. That's whether you're ingesting data into the platform, whether you're extracting data from it, or whether you're manipulating that data. And sitting above that platform, of course, are solutions, whether those are developed by us or, as is the case here, developed in conjunction with our partner. So I think if that's okay, Csilla, I'll probably stop there, but that hopefully gives you a sense of the platform and obviously the attendees of the webinar, a sense of what the Paravela Provenance platform is all about.
Yeah, it's a great segue, for maybe Mustafa to, tell us a little bit more about, what the Uqoud contract management platform does. What do you use our technology for, and maybe also why? Why did you sort of pick us? So please, Mustafa.
Sure. Well, basically, the core of what we do is contract management and digital onboarding. And even the word in itself, Uqoud, for those that are not Arabic speaking, means contracts. And when we first set up Uqoud as a platform, the main objective was to
Csilla, can you step the slides?
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry.
A complete life cycle of the contract. So, yeah. So the whole point was to create a digital journey, a complete digital journey of the contract and document lifecycle management. And while we're setting that up, the core of what we wanted to secure, since we're operating in the region, in the MENA GCC out of UAE, Jordan, and KSA, was to make sure that we're complying with all the legal requirements of the region and making sure that security is the cornerstone of the complete journey that we're setting up for our customers. So Uqoud not only is a SaaS platform, as you can see, which will allow you to create contracts, set them in a workflow, allow people to negotiate, but what we're digitally authenticating every person that is accessing this contract and signing this contract. So within that, on the digital signature part, we're also integrated with the local digital signature authority. So within the UAE, we're integrated to UAE Pass, Jordan as well, there's Sanad, and soon in KSA, which will be our next stop, integrating with UMDA, which is the local authority there. So as you've noticed, I discussed a lot the digital onboarding of people, the digital signature. So this is why we handle a lot of assets, right? And we really needed a partner that can help us make sure at least, start the journey somewhere where we can secure a most important component, which is the consent aspect, whereby people we are handling these consents in a very immutable way. They're stored in the right manner to make sure that they're not immutable, they're not to be adjusted, changed in any format. So this is the cornerstone of what we started. Then we built on it, and we are also building on it together, obviously, to even handle eKYC data in itself using provenance. So the face biometrics, the ID that we're capturing, and this is a journey, right? That hopefully Duncan has mentioned. There's a lot of traction on how things are handled in terms of data. So we need to make sure that everything we're doing is in the right secured manner. We've also done projects together that we can also discuss shortly. But this is, in a nutshell, what we do as Uqoud. So these all are separate modules that all are handled separately or can be provided within the platform, and we focus security on each and every element along the journey.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Mustafa. And as Duncan, you were part of the whole integration process, right? That when we made these two technologies work together. And can you tell us a little bit more about how that went? Tell us about the easy stuff. Tell us about the challenges, lessons learned, and things like that. So please, if you could, spend a few minutes on how that.
Absolutely. I guess the intersection or integration really did hinge on creating, a chronicle domain. That's, technically the definition of the assets, the actors, the activities, and so on. that then obviously match the concepts within the existing Uqoud platform. And what was really interesting about that was, I guess I can leave it to Mustafa to describe the history perhaps a little bit in a minute, but you know, what we had was a classic case of an existing implementation. And so how easy or difficult would it be to marry the internal concepts within the Uqoud platform with the concepts that obviously are meat and drink to the provenance platform. And the good news is that there was a very well thought out architecture within Uqoud's platform already, so that a lot of very solid engineering. And so the concepts, teasing out those concepts and creating that common language to allow, in this case, you know, the modeling of, because it is modeling at the end of the day, of those contracts, and more importantly, the consent relating to those contracts. That was actually relatively straightforward, I would say. And that's because, you know, good solid engineering on both sides, good level of abstraction, because if you're too down in the weeds and you get too bogged down in bits and bytes, it can be very hard to make these integrations work. So we were fortunate that, you know, the right concepts surfaced very quickly. And then the fun started, which was, of course, then now you've got to deploy and it's not just, you know, creating that common language and then deploying it, but then it's how do you then manage that and roll that forwards. And so, you know, a good deal of work has then been done by the teams, you know, doing QA to make sure that this is indeed a robust enterprise platform. And that really was the you know, the probably in some ways, you know, the more significant challenge. And that's partly because, you know, we're both using relatively new technologies, and but you know, there was a very strong sense of the team working as a single team that allowed us to be ultimately successful. And so the great news is from the Uqoud point of view is that they can run our platform on-prem, in the cloud, or as part of a SaaS offering. So it's very, very flexible in that regard. And the other thing I'd say I'd credit them with is they already had a lot of experience around Kubernetes, which was very important because, you know, that's the bedrock for all of us. So I think, you know, I would say it was a very good experience. The teams pulled together very effectively.
Yeah, it was definitely a great journey, and I don't know, maybe we can talk a little bit more about the actual use case. You know, that checking together the first potential client. I mean, yeah, what are we actually doing in real life? Maybe Mustafa, you could spend a few minutes on that.
Sure. I mean, as Duncan mentioned, and also touched base on, the way we offer Uqoud as a platform is both an on-premise and cloud setup. And one critical client of ours, which actually a central bank for the region, wanted to have, you know, a complete eKYC, centralized eKYC platform that allows different banks to onboard digitally using that platform. So consent was a very, you know, critical aspect. And when we first started the deployment, everything was going smoothly, and except for an element which had to do with, you know, how we're managing these consents. And because we're using, in all honesty, at the time, a different kind of open source blockchain technology, and we faced a lot of issues with this integration, with the reliability of the updates, managing the different nodes and different, you know, let's say integration points with different banks was a huge issues. And this is how we actually got to meet Paravela and Duncan, and their solution just integrated perfectly. I mean, a lot of effort has been done on both sides, obviously, in order to make it happen. But the end result was a smooth product where all the operations in terms of granting the consents, managing these consents, updating the whole platform when updates is needed, integration with different banks and different parties was done very smoothly. So it's something that once in place is easily replicated, let's say, or easily ongoing, managed in an ongoing manner. We don't need to look back on it at all at the moment. And it's important because in such platforms, there's always changes, right? There's always changes to the features. There's always changes to the different parties that are integrating. We're building on top of it. So you need really a robust underlying, component that handles the most important elements, whereby then the just features keep building on top. And again, we're building more. They've liked the concept of how immutable and how things are handled in terms of assets. That later on, even the client itself wants other components to be also handled in the same way within the whole platform. So this is just to put things into context of how the project itself was built and run, and how this partnership really managed to add a lot of value to the central bank, and all these banks are integrating to it.
And now that, so I was talking about the partnership. So what's next? I'm asking this if I did not know, but I do. But yeah,
hopefully as our chief strategy officer, you know what we're doing next, Csilla, please.
What are we doing next? Please enlighten me. Yeah. So what's next for our partnership, in terms of the use of the technology, market launch and so on. It's, to both of you, just please say a few words about that.
So I think Mustafa has already touched on the fact that we can extend the core platform that we're providing can be extended, and the way that we would tend to think of that. Oh, bye. I think we're still on.
Yes, we are on. Please
can you kill that? Can you kill the slide maybe?
Yeah, I can come to that.
Sorry,
yep.
It just said thank you for taking an interest. Like, hurry up, finish my point. So I would say that the extensibility, the core platform, that would mean creating additional domain definitions that cover different aspects of the business, guided obviously by Uqoud and their requirements. But I think also equally interesting for both of us is the idea of also breaking new ground in terms of new markets. And in our case, in the case of Paravela, we are headquartering our business here. I'm actually dialing in from Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. And so, we're taking a very much a Saudi first approach. So yes, MENA as a whole and the rest of the world has not ceased to exist, but we're very much focused on developing our business here. And I know that this is something that chimes with Mustafa's own plans for his company. And so there's, I think, a real meeting of minds, not just the technology works, the integration works, but we're also, pulling in the same direction from a business point of view. And so there's, I can speak at some length about the opportunity here, but I would say, you have to be able to bring to the party, bring to the country, know-how, expertise that is of value. So as somebody said at a summit I was at in London a couple of days ago, please don't tell us how to build bridges, roads, you name it. We've done that. We have the expertise. But if you have expertise in advanced technologies or manufacturing, in nuclear power, in renewables, in technology, such as the two of us are bringing to the party, then you are very welcome. And this is not just about flying in and flying out. This is about basing yourself here and building a business here on the back of that. And I think it's a phenomenal business opportunity for both of us. And so I'm delighted that we have a partnership that we can take forward from a business as well as a technical point of view.
And adding to that, it's just what the region is going through, and a lot of it is emerging in Saudi Arabia. And this is why also we're taking the step to move to Saudi Arabia within this year, is this whole shift into the digital space. I know we've heard the buzzword of digital transformation a lot, but what is actually happening is a complete shift whereby everything is being managed digitally, and contracts and identities and digital onboarding has become the core of almost every business. Everyone's got documents that they need to handle. Everyone's got people that they're dealing with remotely. And with the increased, with this digital transformation shift comes a lot of threat, right? We've seen how many incidents we've seen where deepfake has managed to steal identities and shift millions of people in simple online meetings where people are actually stealing identities. And this is why we're focused on that. We're focused on the security element. We're focused on that. When we do offer digital onboarding services, we offer it with the ultimate security that can be, really securely stored, traced. And this is why we do need more of services like Paravela and Chronicles, and in order to make sure that whatever we're offering customers within this journey is a secured one. And we hope we can build on this to spread to the region as smoothly as possible.
Just to add one thing to that, I can attest to that contract management itself is a huge challenge. As you say, Mustafa, when people talk sort of big picture, they talk about digital transformation, but at a concrete level, contract management is something that is crying out to be made more efficient, and that obviously links very much to things like supply chain, secure supply chain, other use cases. So there are a significant number of very large conglomerates here that grew up as family-owned businesses, and they are very big businesses that are trying within their own group, let alone outside their group, to develop these services across the group and then ultimately commercialize those where it makes sense. And so there is a tremendous opportunity for contract management itself within the region, as well as other areas that we are looking at around things like construction, real estate, and infrastructure projects. And there's a $1 trillion worth of investment being made in that area alone. So Csilla, sorry, back to you.
Yeah, I'm going to give the word back to Diana. I think we have plenty of time for questions.
Okay.
So thanks for listening, and please, shoot all the questions you have. Thank you, Diana.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Csilla and Duncan and Mustafa. We really appreciate you sharing your insights about electronic KYC. I also love the way that you focus on taxonomy and common definitions, because it's so important as we think of scalability. And I know it's been something that you, as members of GBBC, have been in earlier stages motivating the community to get into, and it's something that we've gotten very involved as GBBC with the CFTC and our Global Standards Mapping Initiative, and taxonomy is so important. So I love your approach. We really appreciate this presentation. Again, for everyone who's here, I'm Diana, Head of Research and Sustainability at GBBC, and I'm going to take questions. And I have one in specific that I would like to start with, which is, beyond contract management, what are other key areas where provenance can add significant value?
Csilla, why don't you...
Yeah, so actually, there was one thing Duncan mentioned already, which he was talking about this, big real estate infrastructure and construction projects going on in the MENA region in general, but specifically in Saudi. And just think about the kind of assets that these projects work with, right? So these are high impact, high value assets. So you have to make sure that all the components of these assets are authentic. You need to know who touched it, what did it do with it. You want to have that certainty that they have been properly maintained and so on. So, and this is something that our technology can do. So sort of this enterprise asset management is an area, as a key area of focus for us in Saudi and the region in general.
Excellent. And going back to taxonomy, to what extent does your provenance common language model align with the standards like GS1? I think you mentioned some of this, but if you want to. We
touched on this. We name checked Prov-O, the provenance ontology from the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C. And so that's a very broad, very, very powerful language. What the Paravela provenance platform does is implements a subset of that, which allows us to capture essentially the graph of the relationships between, as I mentioned before, the assets. Technically in Prov-O, they're called entities. The actors, as we like to call them, are called agents and the activities are activities. So essentially mapping those concepts so that you can actually say, you can define, not just agents, or as we would like to say, actors, but you can say, I want to talk about contractors, or I want to talk about, whatever the domain of discourse is. So in the example that Csilla just gave, the agents or actors can be very varied. By the way, that can also include insurers. It can include regulators. So it's so the Prov-O standard gives you that fundamental sort of power to actually build up a knowledge graph at the end of the day. I think there is a strong relationship between some of that work and what GSI has been doing. And Csilla, I don't know if you want to comment on that particularly, because I know you've been looking into that.
Yeah, so there are some similarities, obviously, in that work. And we are looking, for the future, and, when thinking about the product roadmap and, new standards that we want to use, GS1 is one that we are looking closely at, especially when it comes to the secure supply chain. So yeah, that's something that obviously we have in mind. But then again, the W3C standard and the GS1 is not far away from each other, so they are very, very similar.
And a lot of this, Diana, goes back to the sort of early days of the semantic web, and a lot of the concepts grew out of that. So the important thing about Prov-O is it's also underpinning a number of other new initiatives around the provenance of images, so digital images and so on. So it's finding its way into a lot of actual practical applications. So I think, grounding everything in that is important. And by the way, I mean, we're very conscious that, you can say you're open source, but you can be as proprietary and horrible and gnarly and as closed source. So I think it's fundamentally important to look at open standards, as of course you and Csilla know intimately, having done the GSMI work. So
I couldn't agree more. So well said on all fronts. Thank you for sharing that. What about KSA? Why? And what opportunities do you see?
Mustafa, why don't you give your take, and then I'm happy to chip in. I mean,
well, multiple reasons really. Saudi Arabia has really seen a big shift and huge plans in the past, I don't know, 3 years. And the government has been at the forefront of these plans and initiatives. There has been a lot of, incentives, a lot of progressive plans that have started different verticals. We've seen a huge shift in what they're doing in terms of infrastructure, but also in digitally transforming everything the government today handles. For a country that started this recently, today you can manage almost all of the way you operate towards the government in a digital manner, right? They started with a real digital identity, and then they shifted all of the operation onto that digital work. So there's a lot of contracts that are being handled digitally now. There's a lot of data that is being passed around digitally. They're trying to really take everything from the online, from the offline to the online, and this is where it creates a lot of opportunities for tech companies like ourselves, where we can add a lot of value to solving these problems. We create more solutions, and we are also agile in how we do things. So they like everything to be done in a local manner, so that to maintain with the data localization aspect, which we've seen the whole world shift into recently for multiple reasons. And that's how we operate. We do everything on-premise. We're quite bespoke. So I think whatever is they're doing and these big plans create big opportunities for us, and for the way we look at serving clients. I think both technically and from service perspective and after sales service, I think it creates a huge space for us to excel within. And I guess the timing is now. So we hope that we ride the wave and we get there at the right time.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, if I may, Diana. There's something which people sometimes quote without really knowing what it's about, called Vision 2030. Vision 2030 is an all-encompassing initiative that's about as much about societal change as it is about technology and so forth. And as part of that, innovation is not a dirty word. Innovation is embraced top down. Now, it doesn't mean innovation for its own sake, oh, isn't this cute? It means, you know, innovation as a KPI. Is this adding value? Are you as a ministry, you as a project manager, are you using new technology wisely? We would hope. So there's an element here of it's, you know, people are adventurous, people are willing to actually try new things, which is so refreshing. And that's coming top down from the Vision 2030 down. And then bottom up, there are, you know, some very large scale projects that appeal to us. And there is this whole digitization of government, which is kind of like astonishing when you first see it, because it is so integrated. You know, obviously everyone talks about this in terms of what's the country in Europe, help me, that pioneered the digital government years ago. Estonia, thank you. Yeah, I was say Tasmania, and then I'm like, that's wrong.
Oh.
Sorry, don't know why I was going to say Tasmania, but I knew it was wrong. So yeah, so you know, that was done obviously very early on, but this is a modern take on that, which is incredibly powerful. So top down, you've got that vision driving a lot of change across the country, across many different sectors. There's obviously the ability to invest, so that's important to acknowledge as well. So there's a lot of investment being made, not just domestically, but attracting foreign direct investment into the country. And so, you know, that's really the opportunity. And as I said earlier in the webinar, all are welcome, provided what you bring adds value. So you know, there is a real recognition that you know, and this is why we are relocating to Saudi, to Riyadh itself, is, you know, we do bring some know-how, some expertise, some experience, some gray hair, you know, to the party. And so means, motive, and opportunity, if it was a courtroom drama. So the means is what we and could bring in many respects, motivated to do it here. So we're not flying in, flying out at the weekend off to Bahrain or whatever, but we're prepared to, you know, invest the time and energy here on a long-term basis. And then the opportunity is enormous. And the ambition within Saudi itself is global. So it's not just about transforming the country, it's about repositioning Saudi itself. And if I'm sounding like an apologist, I'm not. I just think I think it's self-evident that there is a huge opportunity, and it's something that is a once-in-a-lifetime thing in many respects. I've spoken at length to one of our investors, Martin Gilbert, who pioneered Aberdeen Asset Management in the Middle East, in the Far East, I beg your pardon. And he said, you know, now, if I was setting out now, I'd be here in Riyadh.
Wow, truly innovative.
Yeah,
Building
honestly, amazing.
Love it. Building on that concept, how open have you seen government agencies and enterprises in KSA to actually using open source technology and blockchain?
So I'll give you one concrete example. I'm conscious of time, but we were invited to a workshop at the Ministry of Tourism, and I luckily had the foresight to say, can you just show us what you've been doing before we started, you know, talking about what we're doing? And they said, oh, well, we've got this private Ethereum network running, and proceeded to show me that they're already hosting a lot of certificates for, you know, tourist guides and whatnot on chain. And actually, one of the things we have to follow up on is they said, but we don't have that provenance piece just yet. But you know, there is a recognition that and you know, value in open source used, and obviously wisely. And we're very much hoping that we will actually be working with you at GBBC to actually do an event here in the fall. But I guess now is not the time to get into too much detail, but that's in the works. So you know, I think, you know, GBBC itself brings a huge amount of value, and there are ambassadors here already representing GBBC that we've connected with on the ground. So yeah, there's a real recognition of the value of open source in all of this.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and thank Duncan, Csilla, and Paravela, and our special guest Mustafa for joining us today for this thoughtful and engaging presentation on eKYC and everything that it takes, right? As the trend toward decentralization goes. We are looking forward to learning more about Paravela's progress alongside Uqoud, and a recording of this presentation will be circulated to all those who registered and also shared publicly on GBBC's YouTube channel. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.